Have you ever stood beneath a starry sky and felt that sense of wonder, that quiet pull toward something greater than yourself? For our ancestors, that feeling wasn't just poetic. It was practical, spiritual, and deeply woven into the rhythm of their lives. They didn't merely look up and see scattered points of light. They saw a grand celestial storybook, rich with meaning and guidance, a cosmic blueprint for living in harmony with the universe. Every constellation, every planet's path, every shift in the heavens was part of a living narrative that informed when to plant, when to harvest, when to marry, mourn, or celebrate. This was the genius of ancient mythmakers. They embedded astronomy into the very rituals that structured human existence, transforming cold, distant stars into characters, teachers, and divine companions. In this video, we're setting out on a journey to uncover how these mythmakers accomplished something extraordinary. We'll explore how they turned solstices into ceremonies, lunar cycles into agricultural rites, and star patterns into sacred maps for navigation and migration. From the sun-drenched temples of Egypt, where light pierced inner sanctums on just the right day to signal a pharaoh's divine connection, to the open Pacific, where Polynesian voyagers trusted the stars as ancestral guides across trackless oceans, we'll see how astronomy was never just a science. It was a story, a prayer, a way of binding communities together under a shared cosmic understanding. These rituals weren't abstract or separate from daily life. They were daily life. They offered meaning in the changing seasons, hope in the face of eclipses, and identity through the Zodiac's evolving symbols. By the time we're done, you won't look at the night sky the same way again. Those flickering lights will feel less like distant mysteries and more like pages in an ancient, unending library, a testament to human creativity, resilience, and our timeless desire to find our place in the cosmos. You'll discover how the myths crafted millennia ago still echo in our language, our traditions, and even in the ways we mark time and celebrate life. So settle in and let's travel back through the ages to decode the celestial secrets hidden in plain sight, waiting, as they always have been, for us to remember and retell. For these ancient cultures, the sky wasn't just a spectacle to admire. It was a master plan, a divine architectural drawing for how to live, build, and believe. They looked up and saw a grand, interconnected system where every celestial movement held profound meaning for earthly existence. This wasn't a passive observation, but an active, interpretive act of mapping the human experience onto the cosmos. The Egyptians provide one of the most stunning examples. They precisely aligned the pyramids of Giza with the 3 stars of Orion's belt, a constellation they associated with Osiris, the god of death, rebirth, and the afterlife. This wasn't a coincidental bit of stargazing. It was a deliberate act of sacred architecture designed to create a physical conduit between the pharaoh's soul and the eternal stars, ensuring his resurrection and journey into the heavens. The pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a launchpad to the cosmos, a permanent stone prayer etched into the desert floor, mirroring the celestial realm. This practice of encoding astronomy into myth and structure was a global phenomenon. On the other side of the world, the Maya were meticulous astronomers, and their warfare was dictated by the movements of Venus, which they revered as a fearsome war god. Their complex charts allowed them to predict the planet's appearances as both the morning and evening star. They believed that initiating battle under certain phases of Venus would grant them favor and ensure victory. This turns the idea of myth on its head. It wasn't just a story told around a fire. It was a strategic military tool, a form of celestial intelligence that directly shaped the fate of kingdoms. The myth of the war god was a narrative framework that made the cold, predictable cycles of a planet something a society could understand, prepare for, and invoke. What's truly remarkable is the sheer practicality woven into these celestial stories. Beyond grand monuments and warfare, this cosmic blueprint guided the most fundamental aspects of daily survival. For cultures like the Polynesians, who embarked on perilous voyages across the vast Pacific, the stars were a literal map. They didn't have compasses or GPS, they had stories. They memorized the rise and set points of specific stars and constellations, weaving this knowledge into chants and oral narratives that were passed down through generations. The star was not just a navigational marker, it was an ancestor, a character in a story whose position offered guidance and protection. This personification of celestial bodies is the key that unlocked the vastness of space for the human imagination. By giving the planets and constellations names, personalities, and motivations, by turning them into gods, heroes, and animals, ancient people made the impersonal universe personal. They could pray to these forces, celebrate them with festivals, and align their daily routines, from planting crops to getting married, with the rhythms of the heavens. This integration was so complete that astronomy ceased to be a separate science and instead became the very heartbeat of myth, a rhythmic pulse giving life and order to every aspect of the ancient world. This profound connection between architecture and astronomy is beautifully illustrated at the great temple of Abu Simbel in Egypt. Deep within the mountain, carved by the Nile, sits a sanctuary holding statues of the gods. For 364 days of the year, this inner chamber rests in shadow, but on one specific morning, a beam of sunlight pierces the long, dark corridor, traveling all the way to the back wall to illuminate the face of the seated pharaoh, Ramses II. The precision required to achieve this effect is staggering. The entire massive structure was oriented so that this celestial event would occur on just the right day, believed to be the king's birthday, transforming a solar alignment into a powerful piece of political and religious theater. In that moment of brilliant illumination, the boundary between man and God blurred. The sun itself, the deity Ra, was seen to reach out and anoint the ruler, publicly renewing his divine mandate to lead. This was far more than a clever trick of light. It was a ritual set in stone, a yearly reaffirmation of cosmic order where the heavens literally validated earthly power. This concept of temples as instruments for capturing the sun was a global phenomenon. Across the Atlantic, the Maya built the pyramid of Kukal at Chichen Itza with such exactitude that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the interplay of sunlight and shadow creates the illusion of a massive serpent slithering down the side of the staircase. This was a direct representation of the feathered serpent god Kukal descending from the heavens to earth. The event signaled a time of renewal and was met with great ceremony as the community gathered to witness the god's symbolic return, which in turn marked the precise times for preparing the fields and sowing crops. The architecture itself became a sacred calendar, a colossal timekeeping device that everyone could read, aligning human agricultural cycles with the unwavering rhythm of the solar year. These solar alignments served a crucial purpose beyond the spectacular. They made the vast, impersonal journey of the sun something immediate, tangible, and deeply personal for the entire community. People didn't just hear stories about the sun god's journey, they could gather and experience it firsthand. The warmth of that single ray of light penetrating the dark temple was a physical sensation that connected them to the cosmos. It was a shared experience that reinforced social bonds and collective identity, uniting everyone under a common celestial narrative. This practice masterfully blurred the line between the scientific observation of the sun's path and the spiritual veneration of its life-giving power. The temple was both an observatory and a church. The priest was both an astronomer and a mystic, and the sun was both a ball of burning gas and a radiant deity. In this way, the sun's daily arc across the sky became more than just a cycle of light and dark. It was a daily reminder of a universe in balance, where human life was intimately and purposefully woven into the fabric of the cosmos. While the sun provided the grand, sweeping arc of the year, it was the ever-changing moon that dictated the intimate, monthly rhythm of life on the farm. For ancient agricultural societies, the moon was not a distant, cold sphere but a close, personal timekeeper, its gentle glow a reassuring presence in the nightly sky. Its predictable 29.5-day cycle of waxing and waning became the ultimate agricultural planner, a celestial pulse that guided the most critical tasks of sowing, tending, and reaping. Farmers across the ancient world observed that seeds planted under the light of a new moon seemed to sprout with more vigor, while crops harvested under the full moon's glow stored better through the winter. This wasn't mere superstition, it was a form of deeply embedded practical wisdom. The moonlight extended the hours for work after sunset, and the gravitational pull that caused ocean tides was also believed to draw moisture up through the soil, nourishing the newly planted seed. The moon's cycle became a reliable, shared calendar long before paper ones existed, synchronizing entire communities in a collective dance with the seasons. This practical relationship with the moon was deeply enriched by powerful mythic narratives. Cultures personified the moon, giving it a face, a personality, and a divine purpose. In Mesopotamia, the moon god Sin, depicted as a wise old man with a flowing beard and a crescent crown, was not just a symbol in the sky but the actual regulator of time and fertility. His journey from a thin silver crescent to a brilliant full orb was a story of growth and abundance that farmers sought to emulate in their fields. Similarly, in China, the poignant myth of Chang, the goddess who drank an elixir of immortality and fled to the moon, explained its luminous beauty and solitary nature. Her story was told during the Mid-Autumn Festival, a celebration held under the brightest full moon of the year, where families would share mooncakes and offer thanks for the harvest, connecting a tale of love and sacrifice directly to gratitude for the Earth's bounty. These myths found their most powerful expression in community-wide ceremonies led by priests and elders. A common ritual across many cultures was the offering of the first fruits. When the first grains were harvested or the first grapes were ripe, the community would gather under the full moon. The very best of the yield would not be consumed but would be ceremonially offered back to the lunar deity, thrown into a sacred fire, left at an altar, or cast into a flowing river as a gift. This act was a profound gesture of reciprocity and faith. It was a way of saying, "We acknowledge that this abundance comes not solely from our labor, but from your celestial influence, and we thank you by returning a portion to ensure the cycle continues." This ritual transformed the act of harvesting from simple subsistence into a sacred contract with the cosmos. Perhaps the most elegant fusion of lunar cycle and myth is found in the ancient Greek story of Persephone. Her annual descent into the underworld for 6 months brought the barren silence of winter, while her return to the surface each spring triggered the explosion of life and growth. This myth is a perfect allegory for the lunar cycle. The full moon, bright and triumphant in the sky, is Persephone walking among the living, a time of visible abundance and celebration. The new moon, dark and absent from the heavens, is her time in the underworld, a period of quiet potential, of seeds resting dormant in the cold, dark earth, waiting for the return of the light. Farmers living by this story didn't just see the moon's phases. they witnessed the ongoing drama of life, death, and rebirth playing out above them every single month. This narrative gave a comforting, meaningful structure to the inherent uncertainties of farming, transforming anxiety over weather and pests into a patient participation in a timeless, celestial story. The moon was no longer a distant rock. It was a nurturing force, a divine parent watching over the cyclical tapestry of rural life. Its light a silent promise that growth would always follow rest and harvest would always follow the seed. Now let's set sail from the solid ground of temples and fields and venture into the vast, trackless expanse of the open ocean. For seafaring cultures, the night sky was not a backdrop for abstract stories. It was a dynamic, living map, the only reliable landmark in a world of endless blue. The Polynesian voyagers who settled the scattered islands of the Pacific represent one of humanity's most breathtaking feats of exploration, and they accomplished it with nothing but the stars, the waves, and the stories that connected them. To them, a star was not merely a point of light. It was an ancestor, a god, a character in an epic tale whose rising and setting positions were carefully memorized directional cues. They saw the heavens not as a static picture but as a rotating dome, and by knowing which star passed directly over their destination island, they could sail toward it with astonishing accuracy. This was wayfinding, a holistic science that blended deep astronomy with an intimate feel for ocean swells, bird flight paths, and cloud formations, all woven together by narrative. The constellation known to the Greeks as the Pleiades is a perfect example. To the Maori of New Zealand, this cluster is Matariki, often translated as the Eyes of God or Little Eyes. Its heliacal rising, its first appearance just before dawn in the midwinter sky, marked the Maori New Year. This was a time of immense significance, a period for remembrance, celebration, and planning. But its importance was also profoundly practical. For navigators, the position of Matariki in the sky helped calibrate the voyaging season. Myths describe these stars as a wanau, a family of ancestors, whose watchful presence from the heavens guided the canoes safely to new shores. This personification was crucial. It transformed cold celestial mechanics into a relationship. A navigator wasn't just following a star, he was following the guidance of his forebears, which instilled a deep sense of responsibility and courage. This complex astronomical knowledge was not stored in books or charts. It was encoded into the very fabric of culture through chants, songs, and stories. Navigators spent years in apprenticeship memorizing these oral maps. A specific chant might catalog the path of a star from its rising point on the horizon to its zenith, and finally to its setting point, all in relation to known islands. These weren't dry recitations. They were rhythmic, poetic narratives that often included mythic references to the star's origin or personality. This method of storytelling made the information incredibly durable and transmittable across generations. It turned abstract coordinates into a memorable saga, ensuring that a navigator could mentally replay an entire journey's worth of stellar guidance without a single written note. This fusion of the practical and the spiritual was perhaps most evident in the rituals performed before a long voyage. The entire community would gather as the master navigator and crew made offerings to the star gods, perhaps a piece of precious food or a sacred invocation. These were prayers for protection, but also for clarity, a request that the clouds would part and the stars would shine bright to reveal their paths. The canoe itself was often seen as a microcosm of the universe, with its parts named after celestial bodies. This ritualistic send-off blended the technical skill of navigation with a profound spiritual plea, framing the impending journey as a sacred dialogue between the sailors and the cosmos. They were not just conquering the ocean, they were asking permission from the heavens to pass through, acknowledging their small place within a vast, living system. This incredible tradition of stellar storytelling did more than just enable exploration. It forged identity. Every successful migration, guided by the stars, reinforced the power of the ancestral myths. The night sky became a shared cultural touchstone, a constant companion for people who lived their lives between the sea and the stars. For a migrant setting out toward an unknown horizon, the familiar constellations were a tether to home, a promise that even in the deepest solitude of the Pacific, they were never truly alone. They were sailing in the wake of their ancestors, following paths of light that had been traveled in story long before they were ever traveled by canoe. While sailors looked to the fixed stars for guidance across the seas, the ancient astrologer priests of Mesopotamia and Greece turned their attention to the wanderers, the planets. These 7 mysterious lights that moved against the backdrop of fixed stars were not seen as random celestial bodies. They were understood as powerful, conscious gods walking across the dome of heaven, their paths directly dictating the fate of empires and individuals alike. The Babylonians, meticulous record keepers, mapped the predictable yet complex movements of Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Venus, and Mercury over centuries, creating detailed ephemerides that could forecast their positions with remarkable accuracy. But this was never a purely scientific endeavor. Each planet was a deity. Marduk was Jupiter, the king of the gods, whose position signaled fortune or folly for the sitting king. Ishtar was Venus, the goddess of love and war, whose dual appearance as both morning and evening star was interpreted as a shift in her mood from benevolent to wrathful. This system of celestial correspondences transformed the sky into a dynamic, divine chessboard, where every planetary motion was a move by a god, and it was the priest's sacred duty to interpret its meaning for those on Earth. This interpretation took the form of elaborate rituals of divination, where the fate of nations hung on the observed path of a planet. The most skilled astrologers were trusted advisors in the royal court. Before a king would declare war, sign a treaty, or even name an heir, he would consult these celestial readers. They would create a detailed astrological chart based on the precise planetary alignment at the moment of the proposed event. If Mars, the god of war, was in a favorable aspect to the king's ruling planet, it might be an auspicious time for battle. If Saturn, associated with limitation and time, was in retrograde, it would be seen as a dire warning to postpone a coronation or major construction project. This was considered a science of timing, an effort to synchronize the most critical human actions with the most favorable celestial rhythms. For common people, though they lacked access to royal astrologers, simpler forms of this practice filtered down. The choosing of a wedding date, the start of a long journey, or the opening of a new business might be scheduled during a favorable phase of Venus or Jupiter, often determined by local priests using almanacs based on these ancient observations. In this way, the movements of distant planets were woven into the most personal milestones of everyday life. Perhaps no planetary phenomenon caused more anxiety than retrograde motion, the apparent backward movement of a planet in the sky as Earth overtakes it in its orbit. Our modern understanding of orbits explains this as an optical illusion, but for the ancients it was deeply ominous. A planet in retrograde was a god who had literally turned his or her back on the people. The mythologies built around these events provided both an explanation and a prescribed solution. In Mesopotamia, if the god Nergal, associated with Mars, went retrograde, it was interpreted as him retreating to the underworld, gathering his power for a coming period of pestilence or conflict. This wasn't a time for passive fear, but for active ritual appeasement. The king might engage in a substitute king ritual, where a temporary stand-in would be placed on the throne to absorb the incoming divine wrath, while the real king went into hiding until the planet resumed its normal course. For the general populace, rituals of fasting, prayer, and specific sacrifices were enacted to soothe the anger of the seemingly distant deity. This intricate fusion of precise astronomical observation and rich mythological narrative created a living cosmos. The universe was not a cold, mechanical clockwork. It was a responsive, conscious entity. Human beings were not separate observers but active participants in a constant celestial dialogue. Every planetary conjunction, every eclipse, every retrograde cycle was a sentence in a story written in the sky, and the rituals of astrology and divination were humanity's way of reading that story aloud, interpreting its plot twists, and pleading for a favorable outcome. It was a system that offered both awe and agency, reminding people that their lives, from the throne room to the family home, were part of a grand heavenly drama that was always unfolding above them. Far from being arbitrary dates on a calendar, the grand festivals of the ancient world were meticulously synchronized with the celestial clock, their timing dictated by the precise reappearance or disappearance of a key constellation on the horizon. This moment, known as the heliacal rising, occurs when a star or constellation becomes visible just before dawn after a period of being lost in the sun's glare. It was a powerful, reliable signal that a new season was beginning, and ancient cultures built their most important celebrations around these celestial cues. In ancient Greece, the Great Dionysia, a massive festival honoring Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and ecstatic release, was scheduled for early spring. This timing was no accident. It coincided with the heliacal rising of the constellation Virgo, often associated with the goddess of justice and the harvest. As Virgo ascended into the pre-dawn sky, it signaled the end of winter's dormancy and the imminent rebirth of the vine. The entire city of Athens would erupt into a multi-day spectacle of theatrical performances, processions, and communal wine drinking. This was more than just a party. It was a collective ritual of catharsis and renewal, where the community purged the struggles of the past year and invoked the gods' blessing for the fertility of the coming season, all under the watchful eye of a celestial maiden. These stellar events also provided a narrative framework for understanding the more melancholic turns of the year, and few stories illustrate this better than the myth of Orion. The brilliant, boastful hunter was said to have been killed by the sting of a giant scorpion sent by the earth goddess Gaia. The gods, in their pity, placed both Orion and the scorpion in the sky as constellations, but positioned them on opposite sides of the heavens so they would never meet again. This myth beautifully explains the observable astronomy. As the constellation Scorpius rises in the summer sky, Orion sets, appearing to flee from his celestial nemesis and vanishing from the night sky for several months. His disappearance was not seen as a simple astronomical fact. It was a time of mourning for the lost hunter. Communities might hold quiet ceremonies or feasts to honor his memory, storytelling sessions recounting his great deeds, and perhaps even rituals to ensure his safe return. Then, months later, when Orion began to reappear on the eastern horizon just before dawn in late summer, it was a cause for celebration. His return heralded the coming of the autumn hunting season and the cooler, longer nights of winter. His rising was a promise that life, even when it seems to retreat, always returns. The true power of these festivals lay in their ability to transform the community's relationship with the cosmos. When people gathered under the stars for a feast dedicated to a constellation's return, the abstract pattern above them ceased to be a random scattering of lights. It became a character in their shared story, a divine witness to their celebrations. The rhythmic pounding of drums during a harvest dance wasn't just music, it was an echo of the heartbeat of the universe. The shared sacrifice of a prized animal was an offering made not to an unknowable void, but to a familiar celestial entity they knew through story. These collective experiences forged an incredible social cohesion, reinforcing a shared cultural identity and a common understanding of the world. Everyone, from the highest priest to the humblest farmer, participated in the same narrative, one that connected their labor, their joys, and their sorrows directly to the grand movements of the heavens. In this way, the night sky was transformed into the ultimate communal theater. The constellations were the cast of characters, the planets were the guest stars making special appearances, and the cosmic cycles were the plot lines of an endless drama in which every member of the community had a role to play. The rituals performed under this celestial stage were acts of participatory storytelling, a way for humanity to not just observe the universe, but to actively join in its performance, ensuring that their culture, their values, and their very sense of belonging were forever written in the stars. Of all the celestial events that captured the ancient imagination, few were as universally terrifying as an eclipse. The sudden, unexpected darkening of the sun at midday, or the blood-red shadow creeping across the full moon, was a profound disruption of the natural order. In a world governed by the reliable cycles of the sun and moon, an eclipse was a moment of cosmic chaos, a clear sign that something was terribly wrong. Across the globe, cultures independently arrived at a similar explanation. The luminous life-giving orb in the sky was under attack. In ancient China, the prevailing myth described a great celestial dragon attempting to devour the sun. This was not a metaphor. It was understood as a literal, ongoing battle in the heavens, and the fate of the world depended on humanity's response. The prescribed ritual was a tremendous, community-wide effort to drive the beast away. People would take to the streets banging pots, drums, and gongs, shooting arrows into the sky and creating an incredible cacophony, all to scare the dragon into releasing its prey. This practice was so ingrained that court astronomers were executed for failing to predict an eclipse and provide the necessary warning to begin the ritual. The noise-making was far more than superstition. It was a collective act of defense, a way for every member of the community, from the emperor to the lowest farmer, to participate in saving the world from darkness. This theme of a cosmic predator is echoed in Norse mythology, which saw not one, but two wolves forever chasing the sun and moon across the sky. Their names were Skurll and Hati, and an eclipse occurred on the rare, terrifying occasions when one of the wolves finally caught its quarry. For the Vikings, the solution was not noise, but light and fervent prayer. As the sun began to vanish, communities would rush to light great bonfires, torches, and candles. They believed the wolves were creatures of shadow, and this sudden explosion of fire would startle them, forcing them to release the sun or moon and continue their endless chase. These rituals were acts of profound empathy. The people weren't just saving themselves, they were rushing to the aid of the celestial bodies themselves, whom they saw as divine allies in a constant struggle against chaos. The chanting and prayers were a way of lending their strength to Sol and Mani, the sun and moon deities, helping them break free and restore balance to the cosmos. What's truly fascinating about these eclipse rituals is how they functioned as a societal pressure valve. The primal fear induced by the event was real and paralyzing. But the mythic narrative provided a framework for understanding, and the prescribed ritual provided a clear, tangible course of action. Fear was transformed into purpose. Instead of cowering helplessly indoors, everyone had a role to play. The collective banging of drums, the kindling of communal fires, the unified chants, these actions channeled individual panic into a powerful, shared experience. In that moment, the community wasn't just a group of people, It was a single organism acting in concert to defend the cosmic order. This process served to powerfully reaffirm cultural values and social bonds. It was a dramatic reminder that they were all in this together, that their shared beliefs and collective actions had real power in the universe. An eclipse, rather than fracturing society, ultimately strengthened it, reinforcing the authority of the myths and the priests who interpreted them. By weaving these dramatic stories around eclipses, ancient mythmakers performed an incredible service. They took a terrifying, inexplicable astronomical event and gave it a name, a face, and a story. They provided a script for how to respond, turning a moment of potential existential crisis into a reaffirmation of order and community. The dragon and the wolves were not just fanciful tales, they were cognitive tools that made the unknowable knowable and the uncontrollable manageable. This embedding of eclipses into the ritual calendar ensured that even these rare and frightening events had a place in the grand scheme of things. They were not random acts of violence from an indifferent universe, but dramatic episodes in an ongoing celestial narrative, a narrative in which humanity played a critical, supporting role. But the influence of the Zodiac reached far beyond the nursery, extending its celestial fingers into the most practical aspects of daily commerce and survival. For the ancient farmer, the cyclical dance of the constellations across the night sky was the most reliable almanac they possessed. A Babylonian farmer wouldn't just feel a change in the breeze to know when to sow his barley. He would wait for the sun to enter the constellation of Aries, the ram, a sign associated with initiation and new beginnings in the spring. This wasn't a vague superstition. It was a sophisticated system of phonology where celestial events were linked to earthly cycles. The heliacal rising of the Pleiades star cluster, which occurred in May, signaled the start of the harvest season for the Greeks, while its setting in November warned of the coming storms and the start of the dangerous sailing season. This knowledge was codified in poetic works like Hesiod's Works and Days, which served as a farmer's manual written in the stars. By consulting these zodiacal calendars, which were often painted on temple walls or circulated on clay tablets, ordinary people could align their labor with the perceived rhythms of the universe, turning the mundane act of planting a seed into a collaborative act with the cosmos itself. This deep integration of celestial identity into the domestic sphere is beautifully preserved in the archaeological record. Walking into a wealthy Roman's home, you might have been greeted by a stunning mosaic on the floor depicting the 12 signs of the zodiac encircling a central figure of the sun god Sol Invictus. This was more than just decorative art. It was a permanent, daily reminder of the home's place within the cosmic order. It served as a spiritual anchor, a way to visibly claim the protection and influence of the heavens for the household and all who lived within it. Similarly, in ancient synagogues across the Levant, intricate zodiac mosaics have been discovered, often placed alongside depictions of the seasons, creating a powerful visual link between divine law, celestial time, and agricultural life. These artifacts tell us that people didn't just occasionally think about their astrological sign. They lived with it, walked over it, and were surrounded by its symbols. It was a constant, visual language that connected their personal identity to a vast, mythic framework, making the grand and impersonal scale of the universe feel intimately personal and manageable. The most direct way this celestial connection was maintained was through personal ritual, especially surrounding one's birthday. In many cultures, the day a person was born was not just a celebration of their earthly existence, but a powerful reactivation of their cosmic blueprint. In Hellenistic Egypt, for example, it was common for an individual to make a small offering to their ruling planet, the planet that governed the sign their sun was in at birth. If you were a Taurus ruled by Venus, you might offer a libation of wine or a scented perfume at a household shrine. For a Saturn-ruled Capricorn, the offering might be more somber, perhaps a dark stone or a gesture of respect to an elder. This annual ritual was a way of thanking that planetary deity for its influence over the past year and petitioning for its continued favor in the year to come. It was a form of spiritual upkeep, a recalibration of one's personal harmony with the universe. This practice transformed a birthday from a simple marker of age into a sacred anniversary, a day to consciously acknowledge and engage with the celestial forces that were believed to shape one's character, fortune, and very essence. This profound personalization of astronomy represents one of the most enduring legacies of the ancient mythmakers. They took the vast, impersonal clockwork of the heavens and made it a mirror for the human soul. The stars were no longer distant, cold points of light. They were a celestial family of archetypes: the heroic archer, the nurturing crab, the balanced scales that provided a language for understanding human nature itself. Your zodiac sign became a story you told about yourself, a narrative framework that explained your strengths, your challenges, and your place in the world. It wove the grand, cosmic patterns into the most intimate threads of everyday life. The name you were given, the career you pursued, the partner you chose, and the daily choices you made. In doing so, ancient astrology offered something timeless, a sense that our individual lives, however small they may seem, are part of a magnificent, meaningful, and storied cosmos. These moments of celestial equilibrium and extreme were so much more than calendar dates. They were the hinges upon which the entire year turned, charged with spiritual significance and profound communal meaning. The solstices, those 2 days marking the sun's highest and lowest points in the sky, and the equinoxes, the 2 moments of perfect balance between day and night, represented fundamental shifts in the cosmic order. Ancient societies saw these not as passive astronomical events, but as active, liminal periods, times when the veil between the human and divine worlds was at its thinnest, and the power of the gods was most palpable and available. The entire rhythm of life, from the cycle of planting and harvest to the very authority of rulers, was tied to this solar journey, and celebrating these turning points was a way to ensure the sun's continued favor and the world's continued existence. Nowhere is this more dramatically illustrated than with the Inca Empire's Inti-Raymi festival. High in the Andes, the winter solstice in June marks the sun's greatest distance from the Earth, a time of shorter days and colder temperatures that could inspire deep anxiety. For a culture that worshipped Inti, the sun god, as their divine progenitor and the source of all life and energy, his apparent weakening was a direct threat to the empire's stability. Inti-Raymi, the Festival of the Sun, was a magnificent state-sponsored ritual designed to halt this retreat and compel the sun's return. The Sapa Inca, believed to be the direct son of Inti, would lead elaborate processions to the central plaza of Cusco. There, amid a sea of thousands of subjects, priests would offer sacrifices of llamas and, crucially, light a massive sacred fire using a concave mirror to focus the sun's rays. This captured sunlight was then distributed to torches and carried to every corner of the empire, symbolically rekindling the sun's strength and ensuring his warmth would return to nourish the crops. The festival was a powerful act of sympathetic magic and a public reaffirmation of the cosmic contract between the people, their king, and their creator god. This theme of divine renewal is echoed across continents and cultures, each with its own mythic explanation for these solar milestones. In ancient Persia, the spring equinox was celebrated as Nowruz, the New Year, a holiday that persists to this day. Its origins are deeply tied to the Zoroastrian myth of the god Mithra. The story tells of Mithra slaying a primordial bull, an act from which all life on Earth, every plant, animal, and beneficial herb sprang forth. The spring equinox, the moment of balance before the triumph of light over darkness, was seen as the annual reenactment of this creative sacrifice. It was a time of immense fertility, renewal, and cleansing. Rituals involved jumping over bonfires for purification, visiting family to renew bonds, and setting a special table adorned with symbols of rebirth, like sprouting lentils and hyacinth flowers. The myth provided a narrative that connected the abstract astronomical event of equal day and night to the tangible, bursting fertility of the spring season, making the equinox a celebration of life itself triumphing over death. To physically capture and measure these fleeting celestial moments, ancient engineers constructed some of the world's most enduring and enigmatic monuments. While Stonehenge is the most famous example, its purpose was far from unique. Across the British Isles, in the Boyne Valley of Ireland, the passage tomb of Newgrange is precisely aligned so that for a few precious minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, a single shaft of sunlight travels down a long, narrow passageway to illuminate the inner burial chamber deep within the ancient mound. This incredible feat of Neolithic engineering transformed a tomb into a cosmic clock and a theater for a divine light show, linking the cycles of the sun directly to concepts of death, rebirth, and the afterlife. Similarly, the Great Pyramid of Chichen Itza, known as El Castillo, was designed so that during the equinoxes, the interplay of sunlight and shadow creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the side of the staircase, connecting the sky-bound god Kukal with the earthly realm. These grand celebrations served a crucial dual purpose. On a practical level, they were essential waypoints in the agricultural year, signaling with absolute certainty when to plant, when to harvest, and when to prepare for the lean months. But on a deeper psychological level, they provided a profound sense of order and meaning. By gathering as a community to feast, dance, make offerings, and share in these rituals, people transformed the often frightening uncertainty of seasonal change into an opportunity for collective gratitude and hope. The rituals embedded the vast, impersonal movements of the heavens directly into the cultural memory, ensuring that every generation understood their place within a larger, harmonious cosmic cycle. The solstice was not just the shortest day, it was the day the community came together to help the sun turn back. The equinox was not just a date of balance, it was a moment to celebrate the enduring myth of creation and the eternal return of life. While the solstices and equinoxes provided the solar year's grand framework, and the moon's phases dictated the rhythm of the month, ancient societies faced a profound and practical challenge. These two celestial cycles refused to align neatly. A solar year is roughly 365.25 days long, while 12 lunar months only add up to about 354 days. This 11-day discrepancy might seem minor to us, but for a culture whose entire ritual, agricultural, and economic life depended on precise timing, it was a massive problem that would cause their calendar to rapidly drift out of sync with the seasons. The solution, pioneered by cultures like the Maya, was nothing short of genius: the creation of sacred, lunisolar calendars. These weren't just tools for marking days, they were intricate philosophical systems, masterpieces of mathematics and mythology designed to harmonize the sun's journey with the moon's dance, forcing the heavens to cooperate on a single, unified schedule. The Maya were arguably the undisputed masters of this art. Their system wasn't just one calendar, but several interlocking ones, a complex gearwork of timekeeping. The two most important were the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus a short, unlucky period of 5 days, and the Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred calendar composed of 20-day names combined with 13 numbers. But the true marvel was the calendar round, a 52-year cycle created by meshing the Hob and Tzolk'in together like two giant interlocking wheels. It would take exactly 52 solar years for every possible combination of a day from the Hob and a day from the Tzolk'in to repeat. This period was the fundamental unit of Maya societal time, and its completion was met with a ceremony of immense gravity and fear known as the New Fire Ceremony. As the end of a calendar round approached, anxiety would grip the civilization. They believed the world was held in a fragile balance and that the gods might choose not to renew the cosmic contract, allowing the universe to simply end. On the final night, every fire in every home and temple was extinguished. People would destroy their old pottery and household goods. Priests would then ascend a sacred mountain to watch the star cluster we call the Pleiades. If it passed directly overhead at midnight, it was a sign the gods had granted another 52 years of existence. A new fire was drilled on the chest of a sacrificial victim, and this flame, representing the reborn sun, was carried by runners to relight every hearth in the kingdom. This ritual was the ultimate act of societal cohesion, a collective sigh of relief that synchronized the entire civilization's renewal with the grand celestial clock. Of course, such a complex system required a mythic explanation, a story to make sense of the mathematical gymnastics. For the Maya, the moon goddess Ixchel played a crucial role in this narrative. She was not only a goddess of childbirth, weaving, and medicine, but was also intimately connected to the passage of time and the tides. Myths surrounding her often dealt with themes of cycles, renewal, and correction. The challenging 5-day period at the end of the Hob solar calendar, known as the Wayeb, was considered a dangerous, liminal time when the boundaries between the worlds were thin and malevolent spirits could wander freely. This period was explained as a necessary time of chaos and rest, a moment for the world to catch its breath and for the lunar and solar cycles to be reconciled under Ixchel's watchful gaze. Her mythology gave a divine, relatable face to the abstract problem of celestial math, framing the calendar's imperfections not as human error, but as an intentional, divinely ordained pause built into the very fabric of time itself. This incredible integration of precise astronomy with powerful ritual meant that for the average person, daily life was perpetually in tune with the cosmos. The calendar dictated everything. A priest would consult the sacred almanacs to determine the most auspicious day, based on the combination of the Tzolk'in and the Hob, for a farmer to plant his maize. The schedule for religious festivals honoring specific gods was fixed to these celestial rhythms. Even market days were set by the calendar, ensuring that traders from distant cities would all arrive at the central plaza on the same designated day, creating a rhythm of commerce that pulsed in time with the heavens. This system removed uncertainty and fostered incredible social harmony. Everyone, from the highest priest-king to the most humble laborer, operated on the same schedule, guided by the same celestial narrative. It made the vast, often intimidating movements of the sun, moon, and stars something intimate, predictable, and deeply meaningful. The sacred calendar was the ultimate expression of this cosmic harmony, a tool that allowed humanity to not just observe time, but to participate in its sacred flow, ensuring that every activity, no matter how mundane, was touched by the grandeur of the celestial order. For a ruler in the ancient world, the sky was not just a canopy of stars but a dynamic message board from the gods, and reading it correctly was a matter of life, death, and dynastic survival. The fate of empires often hinged on the ability of court astronomers, who served as both scientists and seers, to decipher the divine warnings and encouragements written in the language of celestial events. A sudden comet with its long, fiery tail streaking across the established order of the night sky, was rarely seen as a beautiful natural phenomenon. In cultures from Rome to China, it was a terrifying omen, an urgent telegram from the heavens typically interpreted as a portent of a king's impending death, a coming natural disaster, or a divine displeasure that could topple a regime. Similarly, a planetary conjunction where two wandering gods like Mars and Jupiter appeared to meet in a close embrace was read as a powerful signal. Depending on the planets involved and the constellation they were in, this could foretell anything from a magnificent military victory to a devastating famine or the birth of a great leader. These were not vague superstitions, but a sophisticated and deadly serious form of celestial intelligence gathering, where the king's most trusted advisors scanned the heavens for data that would directly inform the most critical decisions of state. Perhaps no practice illustrates the sheer gravity of this belief more starkly than the Babylonian substitute king ritual. When the court astrologers identified a truly dire omen, such as a lunar eclipse, that specifically threatened the life of the sitting monarch, they enacted an incredible and chilling procedure. A temporary stand-in king, often a condemned criminal or a simple-minded gardener, was plucked from obscurity and placed on the throne. He was treated with all the outward respect and luxury of a genuine ruler, even having the real king's wives attend to him, all to convincingly deceive the malevolent fate that the omen foretold. The real king would go into hiding, effectively becoming a shadow courtier in his own palace. This substitute would reign, absorbing all the negative cosmic energy until the predetermined danger period passed, usually after 100 days. Then the grim conclusion to the ritual played out. The substitute king and his wife were swiftly and ceremonially executed, having successfully drawn the celestial threat away from the true sovereign and into the grave with them. This macabre practice reveals a world where astronomy was not an abstract study but a direct tool of statecraft, where the perceived movements of the heavens could orchestrate a complex and lethal performance to preserve political power. These rituals were always underpinned by powerful myths that provided a narrative framework, making the unpredictable seem understandable and actionable. In ancient China, the appearance of a comet or an unexpected drought was not a random weather pattern. It was often interpreted as the displeasure of the Dragon King, a powerful deity who controlled the rains and waters. The legend told of how this celestial dragon could withhold rain to punish an unjust or impious ruler, plunging the kingdom into drought and famine. This myth justified and demanded a specific communal response, elaborate state-sponsored ceremonies to appease the angry dragon. The emperor, as the son of heaven, would lead processions of priests and officials to sacred altars, offering prayers, music, and sacrifices while publicly confessing his own failings and promising to rule with greater virtue. The entire ritual was designed to demonstrate humility and respect to the celestial powers, pleading with them to restore balance and bring life-giving rain back to the land. Here, astronomy, through the mechanism of myth, became the ultimate check on a ruler's power, a constant reminder that even an emperor was subject to a higher cosmic authority. This intricate fusion of celestial observation and political myth-making fundamentally embedded the cosmos into the very mechanics of governance. A king considering whether to declare war would delay his armies if Mars, the god of war, was in retrograde, seen as the god turning his back on the campaign. Peace treaties and trade agreements were signed under auspicious planetary alignments to ensure their longevity and success. The legitimacy of a new dynasty could be bolstered by court astrologers who would later discover that a propitious conjunction of Jupiter and Venus had occurred around the time of the emperor's birth, providing a heavenly endorsement of his right to rule. In this worldview, the sky was an active, conscious participant in human authority. The gods were not distant creators who had abandoned their work. they were engaged administrators, constantly sending memos via comet, eclipse, and planetary motion. To lead was to be in a constant dialogue with the cosmos, interpreting its signs, respecting its power, and aligning every law, war, and ceremony with the perceived rhythm of the universe. For the ancient Egyptians, the promise of an afterlife wasn't a matter of faith, but a scientific certainty written in the stars. Their entire funerary practice was a meticulously engineered cosmic journey, and the most stunning evidence of this is the precise alignment of the Great Pyramids of Giza with the 3 stars of Orion's belt. This was no architectural coincidence. In Egyptian mythology, Orion was recognized as Sa, the celestial form of Osiris, the god of death, resurrection, and the afterlife. The pyramid, with its smooth, gleaming white casing stones reflecting the sun, was designed as a monumental launching ramp, a machine, really, to project the soul of the deceased pharaoh from his earthly tomb directly into this celestial realm. The narrow shafts extending from the king's burial chamber weren't air vents. They were sightlines precisely angled to focus on the imperishable stars of the north and the Orion constellation, providing a direct pathway for the royal Ka, or soul spirit, to ascend and join Osiris, achieving eternal life among the undying stars. This transformed the pyramid from a mere tomb into a permanent, stone embodiment of a prayer, a bridge between the earthly and the divine that would stand for eternity. This belief that the stars were the literal abode of the departed provided immense comfort and a powerful narrative for coping with loss. The Greek myth of Heracles offers a beautiful example of this. After a life of immense struggle and a painful, fiery death, the greatest of heroes was not simply gone. The gods, in their admiration, elevated him to the heavens, placing his image among the stars as the constellation now known as Hercules. This story transformed a tragic end into a triumphant beginning. For a grieving Greek family, looking up at that constellation was not a reminder of their hero's suffering, but a testament to his glory and his eternal, watchful presence. This myth inspired personal rituals where families would offer prayers and libations not just to the vague concept of an underworld, but directly to these stellar ancestors, believing their loved ones had achieved a similar, if less spectacular, transformation. The night sky became a vast and welcoming community of ancestors, a glittering city of souls where no one was ever truly lost, just living in a different neighborhood of the cosmos. This celestial connection was made tangible in the intimate details of burial rites across many cultures. It was common to inter the dead with artifacts that served as guides and passports for their stellar journey. In some Chinese tombs, archaeologists have found elaborate Suzhou star maps painted on silk or carved into stone, depicting the celestial landscape with astonishing accuracy. These weren't decorative, they were functional tools providing the deceased with a map to navigate the heavens and find their rightful place among the constellations. Similarly, the Navajo people would often bury their dead with a piece of turquoise or a shell symbolizing the starry sky, ensuring they carried a piece of the cosmos with them. The timing of funerals was also frequently tied to astronomical events. A burial might be scheduled for a specific phase of the moon, believed to smooth the soul's transition, or delayed until the rise of a particular constellation that was seen as a benevolent guide. These practices ensured that the final, sacred rite of passage was performed in harmony with the universe's rhythm, maximizing the chance for a successful and peaceful journey. This profound weaving of astronomy into mourning rituals fundamentally reframed the human experience of death. It was not a final, terrifying descent into nothingness, but a return, a graduation, a transformation into light. Grief, while still deeply painful, was contextualized within a grand, cosmic narrative of eternal recycling. The soul didn't vanish, It simply changed its address, moving from a temporary home of flesh and bone to a permanent residence in the glittering expanse of the night sky. This belief system offered a powerful antidote to the fear of oblivion, giving the bereaved a specific place to direct their love and prayers. Every clear night became an opportunity for connection, a chance to look up and feel the comforting presence of those who had gone before, now immortalized as points of light in the great starry tapestry of eternity. Moving from the grand monuments and state rituals, we find that some of the most intimate and enduring connections to the cosmos were woven, quite literally, into the fabric of daily life by the hands of ancient artisans. For them, the starry vault was not just a spectacle to be observed, but a divine pattern book to be replicated, a way to capture a piece of the infinite and bring it into the home. Whether working with clay, loom, or metal, these craftspeople transformed raw materials into celestial narratives, embedding astronomical wisdom into objects of both stunning beauty and everyday use. A Navajo weaver, for instance, wouldn't simply create a geometric design on a blanket. She would be retelling the story of creation itself, by weaving the pattern of the constellation known as First Big One, which we call Orion, into the textile. She was physically incorporating the story of the Black God, who carefully arranged the stars in the sky. The act of weaving itself became a ritual, a slow, meditative process where the weaver might sing the accompanying creation prayers, invoking the star beings to bless the work and ensure the pattern held not just beauty, but also its original sacred power. The finished blanket was far more than something for warmth. It was a portable piece of the night sky, a visual hymn that could wrap a person in the comfort and order of the cosmos. This sacred approach to craftsmanship was a global phenomenon. In ancient Greece, a potter painting a vase might depict the hero Perseus holding the head of Medusa, surrounded by a specific arrangement of stars. This wasn't merely illustrating a popular myth. It was a direct reference to the constellation patterns, a way of synchronizing a heroic tale with its celestial counterpart. Similarly, an Egyptian goldsmith crafting a pectoral necklace for a priestess would meticulously inlay lapis lazuli to represent the night sky and arrange golden beads in the pattern of the circumpolar stars, the so-called imperishable ones that never set. The ritual of creating such an item was as important as the finished product. The artisan might purify themselves before beginning, offer a small prayer to Thoth, the god of knowledge and the moon, or work only during certain lunar phases believed to be most auspicious for creative endeavors. This process transformed the workshop from a mere production space into a temporary temple, where the artisan served as a mediator between the celestial and the earthly, channeling divine patterns into tangible form. These beautifully crafted objects then took on a life of their own, becoming powerful educational tools long before formal schools existed. In a culture with low literacy rates, a pot decorated with the myth of the Pleiades sisters fleeing Orion wasn't just a container for wine, it was a picture book. A parent could point to the figures on the vessel and tell the story to their children, simultaneously teaching them to recognize that specific cluster of stars in the night sky. A woven blanket with a complex cosmic pattern became a map that could be unfurled by the fire, its threads tracing the path of the Milky Way or the seasonal journey of a particular planet. This visual, tactile method of learning was incredibly effective, passing down complex astronomical knowledge, cultural values, and spiritual beliefs from one generation to the next through the simple, daily act of using these objects. The art itself was the curriculum, and every household item had the potential to be a lesson. Ultimately, this integration of celestial symbols into art and craftsmanship did something profound. It democratized astronomy. While only priests might have access to the top of the ziggurat or the inner sanctum of the temple, everyone ate from a bowl, wore a necklace, or slept under a blanket. These objects made the majesty of the heavens a constant, tangible presence in the domestic sphere. The beauty of a star-patterned pot shining in the firelight, or the weight of a zodiac pendant around one's neck, served as a continuous, gentle reminder that human life was interwoven with a larger, meaningful cosmic order. It was a way to touch the stars without ever leaving home, to hold the universe in your hands, and to see your own story reflected in the endless, glittering tapestry above. This deep connection between the heavens and human health was a fundamental pillar of ancient medicine, where illness was rarely seen as a random event but rather as a sign of celestial disharmony. A healer's role was not just to treat a fever or a wound, but to act as an interpreter of the cosmos, realigning the individual patient with the rhythmic, balancing forces of the universe. In this worldview, the planets were not distant rocks but powerful, conscious entities whose movements exerted a direct influence on the fluids, or humors, within the human body. The fiery energy of Mars was linked to inflammation and anger. The moist, changeable nature of the Moon was tied to the body's fluids and emotional tides, and the structured, restrictive influence of Saturn was associated with melancholy and stiffness. A disease, therefore, could be read as a personal microcosm reflecting a macrocosmic imbalance, and the treatment had to address both levels to be truly effective. This philosophy is brilliantly detailed in foundational medical texts from across the ancient world. In India, the Ayurvedic system meticulously outlined the connection between the planets, or grahas, and the three bodily doshas Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Treatments were timed with exquisite precision. A remedy for a pitta imbalance related to heat and bile might be prepared and administered during the cool, calming hours of a full moon, believed to counteract the sun's excessive influence. Conversely, a kapha-related condition of congestion and lethargy might be treated under the energizing light of a new moon. Similarly, the Hippocratic corpus of ancient Greece explicitly instructed physicians to note the positions of the stars and the phase of the moon before undertaking major procedures like surgery or bloodletting. A surgery performed when the moon was waning was believed to result in less bleeding and faster healing, as the celestial body governing fluids was itself in a period of retreat. This wasn't mere superstition. It was a sophisticated system of timing based on centuries of observational data, an attempt to harness the perceived rhythmic power of the cosmos to aid the body's own healing processes. These practices were given divine authority and narrative depth through the myths of healing gods, whose stories provided a model for this celestial medicine. In Egypt, the figure of Imhotep stands as a towering example. Originally a real historical figure, a brilliant architect and physician to Pharaoh Djoser, he was later deified as a god of medicine and wisdom. Crucially, his divine identity became intertwined with the stars. He was seen as the son of Ptah, the creator god, and was associated with the constellation Orion, just as his patron Osiris was. This stellar connection meant that a priest healer invoking Imhotep wasn't just asking for abstract help. They were calling upon a celestial physician, a being whose power was literally drawn from the heavens. A patient sleeping in a temple sanctuary for dream healing, a practice known as incubation, would be doing so under the watchful eyes of the starry forms of these divine healers, hoping to receive a diagnosis or cure from the cosmos itself in their dreams. This holistic approach created a powerful partnership between the patient, the healer, and the universe. It offered a framework that was both reassuring and empowering. Instead of being a passive victim of a random ailment, a person could actively participate in their own healing by aligning their lifestyle, diet, and treatments with the celestial calendar. It fostered a profound sense of connection, suggesting that personal well-being was part of a vast, interconnected cosmic dance. The ritual of gathering herbs at dawn under a specific planet's influence, or chanting a prayer as a constellation rose, transformed a medical treatment into a sacred act. It acknowledged that true vitality came not from fighting nature, but from moving with its rhythms, seeking balance within an animate, story-filled, and deeply intelligent universe. Long before the written word, the most vital knowledge of a culture, how to navigate vast oceans, when to plant and harvest, and how to live a good life, was stored not in books, but in stories told under the stars. Elders and priests were the original professors of astronomy, and their classroom was the entire night sky. They understood that a complex star chart was easily forgotten, but a thrilling story about a hero chased by a giant scorpion, immortalized as the constellations Orion and Scorpius, was unforgettable. This was the genius of mythic education. It wrapped practical, life-sustaining information in the irresistible package of narrative, ensuring that each generation internalized the lessons not as dry data, but as a part of their very identity. The stars became a vast, open-air library, and every myth was a book that taught you how to read it. This tradition is perhaps most beautifully preserved in the Aboriginal Australian concept of the Dreamtime. Here, the landscape and the sky are not separate realms but a single, continuous story of creation. The emu in the sky is not just a pattern of dark dust clouds within the Milky Way. It is a celestial emu whose seasonal position tells a profound story. When it appears in the evening sky in April, stretched out horizontally, it is said to be running, and this signals the time to gather emu eggs. Later in the year, as its orientation shifts, it appears to be sitting, indicating the eggs are now in the nest and should not be disturbed. This is not merely an observation. It is a law, an ethical guideline for sustainable hunting woven into a celestial narrative. Around a campfire, an elder pointing out the emu isn't just giving an astronomy lesson. They are reciting a chapter of a living legal and spiritual document, teaching the young about their responsibilities to the land and its creatures through the map of the heavens. Across the globe, from the longhouses of the Norse to the temples of ancient India, ceremonial gatherings were the prime time for this stellar pedagogy. The rhythmic recitation of an epic like the Greek tale of Perseus rescuing Andromeda did more than just entertain. As the bard's voice rose and fell, his gestures would trace the corresponding constellations above, physically connecting the audience to the characters in the sky. This multi-sensory experience, the warmth of the fire, the sound of the familiar verse, the visual guide of the storyteller's hand, cemented the star patterns in memory far more effectively than any rote memorization could. The hero's journey became a memory palace, with each star serving as a cue for the next part of the tale, and by extension, for the practical knowledge embedded within it. A young Polynesian navigator learning the story of Maui fishing up the islands would simultaneously be learning the star path used to voyage to those very islands, his education a seamless blend of adventure and application. This powerful oral tradition was the ultimate preservation tool for complex knowledge. In a world without hard drives or libraries, a society's survival depended on the accuracy of its collective memory. By encoding astronomical data into the fixed, formulaic structure of epic poetry and song, cultures created a robust, error-correcting system. The meter and rhyme of a chant made it difficult to change words without disrupting the flow, ensuring that the crucial information about a star's rising point or a planet's cycle was passed down with remarkable fidelity for centuries. This wasn't just about preserving facts, it was about preserving a worldview. Each recitation was a ritual that reinforced cultural values, the courage of the hero, the wisdom of the elder, the importance of community binding the listeners together under a shared celestial heritage. Through this intimate process of storytelling, the stars were utterly transformed. They ceased to be cold, distant points of light and became instead familiar characters, ancestors, and guides. The sky was no longer a mystery to be feared but a text to be read, a conversation between the generations, a child lying on their back, listening to an elder tell how the bare constellation forever circles the pole star, was learning about perseverance and guidance. They were not just hearing a story, they were being given a lens through which to see their place in the cosmos, understanding that their own life was a small but connected part of an ancient, ongoing, and magnificent celestial story. The great cities of the ancient world were far more than just collections of buildings. They were carefully crafted reflections of the cosmos itself, designed to channel celestial order into the very heart of human society. Urban planners and architects operated under a profound belief that for a city to thrive, it had to be in perfect harmony with the heavens, its layout a terrestrial map of the divine blueprint above. This philosophy turned metropolises like Teotihuacan in Mexico into breathtaking astronomical instruments. The city's central artery, the Street of the Dead, is precisely aligned 15.5 degrees east of true north. This wasn't an error in measurement but a deliberate orientation toward the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster on the day it passed directly overhead around the time of the city's founding. For the people of Teotihuacan, the Pleiades were deeply associated with creation and renewal, and by aligning their entire urban center with this celestial event, they were grounding their civilization in the very moment of its cosmic conception, ensuring its continued vitality and connection to the source of all life. This sacred process began long before the first stone was laid, with the selection of the city's location being a moment of immense ritual significance. The Romans perfected this practice through the art of augury, where a specially trained priest and augur would seek divine approval for a proposed site. The ritual, known as inauguratio, involved the augur marking out a sacred space in the landscape and then carefully observing the flight patterns of birds, their species, number, direction, and sounds, while simultaneously noting the positions of specific stars and planets. This combination of celestial and avian signs was believed to convey the will of the gods. A favorable reading meant the gods sanctioned the location, promising prosperity and protection for the future city. A negative reading, however, could scrap the entire project, sending scouts to find a new, more auspicious site. This practice demonstrates how astronomy was seamlessly integrated with other forms of divination, creating a multi-layered ritual that ensured every human endeavor, especially one as monumental as founding a city, was in lockstep with the perceived order of the universe. Once the site was consecrated, the city's design served to physically reinforce a strict social and spiritual hierarchy, making cosmic power structures visible and tangible. In ancient Beijing, the design of the Forbidden City is a masterclass in this principle. The entire complex is symmetrically arranged along a precise north-south axis, aligning with the pole star, which was seen as the immutable center of the heavenly realm and the seat of the celestial emperor. Just as all other stars revolved around this fixed point, all human activity was meant to revolve around the Son of Heaven, the Chinese emperor, whose throne sat directly on this celestial axis. The placement of temples, gates, and administrative buildings was dictated by this cosmic geography, with each structure assigned a specific cosmological significance. This wasn't merely symbolic architecture, it was a physical engine for maintaining balance. The city was believed to function as a conduit, drawing down harmonious celestial energies from the North Star and distributing them through the empire via the emperor, whose authority was thus presented not as a matter of politics, but as a fundamental law of the cosmos. This intricate fusion of myth, astronomy, and architecture transformed the simple act of moving through the city into a participatory ritual. A citizen walking down the main thoroughfare of a Mesopotamian city like Babylon, which was often aligned with the processional path of a patron god's constellation, was literally walking a sacred path. The towering ziggurat at the city's center wasn't just a visually impressive landmark. It was a symbolic mountain, a replication of the cosmic axis mundi that connected Earth to heaven. Every glance toward it was a reminder of one's place in a divinely ordered universe. The experience was designed to cultivate a specific state of mind, one of order, piety, and belonging. The city's walls did more than keep out invaders. They enclosed a sanctified space, a miniature cosmos where the chaos of the outside world was held at bay, and the harmonious rhythms of the stars were made the governing principle of daily life. In this way, the urban landscape became the most pervasive and powerful ritual of all, one that every citizen, from the highest official to the lowest merchant, participated in with every step they took. The very act of preparing and sharing a meal was, for our ancestors, a profound ritual that connected the dinner table directly to the cosmos. This deep intertwining of astronomy and sustenance transformed eating from a simple biological function into a sacred dialogue with the universe, where every ingredient told a story of celestial cycles and seasonal shifts. Long before modern calendars, the most reliable signals for when to hunt, when to gather, and when to feast were written in the stars, and ancient cultures developed intricate culinary traditions that honored these heavenly cues. The ripening of the first grains or the migration of a herd wasn't just a matter of weather. It was an event choreographed by the cosmos, and to partake in the bounty was to participate in a grand celestial drama. Consider the Celtic festival of Lughnasadh, celebrated at the beginning of August. This was not an arbitrary date but was intricately tied to the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, which appeared in the dawn sky around this time. For the Celts, this celestial event signaled the start of the harvest season, a critical and precarious time that would determine the community's survival through the winter. The festival was dedicated to the god Lugh, a solar deity associated with skill and craftsmanship, and its central ritual was a great communal feast. The first sheaves of grain were harvested and ceremonially ground into flour to bake a special loaf of bread. This bread wasn't just food, it was a tangible manifestation of the sun's energy captured through the grain and now to be consumed by the community. The feast was an act of thanksgiving to the solar god for his life-giving force, and a plea for his continued favor to ensure the rest of the harvest was successful. In this way, the appearance of a specific star directly prompted a culinary celebration that blended gratitude, prayer, and practical preparation for the months ahead. This connection between a mother's grief and the Earth's barrenness provided a powerful narrative framework for agricultural rituals. To ensure Demeter's joy and thus the Earth's fertility, the ancient Greeks held secret rites known as the Thesmophoria. This women's festival involved sacrifices and offerings made to the goddess, including the casting of piglets, symbols of fertility, into sacred pits. Later, their decayed remains were retrieved and mixed with the seeds saved for the next year's sowing. This act was a potent form of sympathetic magic, blending the myth of life from death with the practical act of fertilization. The first bread baked from the new harvest would be offered to Demeter in gratitude, a culinary prayer that acknowledged her sorrow and celebrated the return of her daughter, and with her, the return of life-giving food to the world. The story made the abstract concept of seasonal change deeply personal and emotionally resonant, ensuring that every bite of bread was a reminder of this cosmic cycle of loss and return. This celestial symbolism was baked directly into the food itself through specific shapes and forms. Across Northern Europe, it was common practice to bake bread and cakes in the shape of solar crosses, wheels, or spirals, especially during the solstices and equinoxes. These weren't merely decorative, they were edible talismans. Consuming a solar crossbun during the winter solstice was believed to literally ingest the sun's strengthening power, helping to fortify the community through the darkest days of the year and encourage the sun's return. Similarly, the tradition of the moon cake during the Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival is a perfect example. This rich, round pastry, often stamped with celestial characters and shared among family, directly mirrors the full moon it honors. Eating it under the brilliant autumn moon was an act of unity, with the family gathered, with the ancestors remembered, and with the lunar deity Chang celebrated for her role in the seasonal abundance. The food itself became a ritual object, a small, consumable monument to the astronomical event it celebrated. This profound integration meant that nourishment was never just about physical sustenance. Every meal was a layered experience, a daily ritual that connected the individual to the rhythms of the heavens and the labor of the earth. The food on the plate carried the story of the star that signaled its planting, the myth that explained its growth, and the symbol that represented its celestial patron. To eat was to acknowledge this entire chain of connection, to taste the sunlight in the wheat, to remember the goddess's grief in the pomegranate seed, and to celebrate the turning year in the shape of the loaf. It was a constant, gentle reminder that human life was sustained by a vast, interconnected, and story-filled cosmos, making even the most ordinary meal an extraordinary act of participation in the universe's eternal cycles. These sophisticated tools, often crafted from gleaming brass and intricately engraved with celestial maps, were far more than mere calculators. They were considered sacred objects, physical conduits to the divine order. In the Islamic world, the precise timing of the 5 daily prayers, or salah, is not a matter of convenience but a strict religious obligation, with each prayer window defined by the sun's specific position in the sky. The Fajr prayer begins at the first hint of dawn, a faint light on the horizon, while the Maghrib prayer commences the moment the sun disappears completely below the horizon. Determining these exact moments required incredible precision, and the astrolabe was the perfect instrument for this sacred task. A skilled timekeeper, known as a muwakit, would use the device to measure the sun's altitude, its instrument's careful alignment with the pole star, and its complex web of plates representing the celestial sphere for different latitudes. This wasn't a cold, mathematical exercise. It was a devotional act. The very use of the tool was guided by the belief that angels were recording the faithfulness of each prayer, making the astrolabe a key that unlocked the gates to proper worship, ensuring the entire community's devotions were synchronized with the cosmos itself. This sacred fusion of precise measurement and deep devotion was a global phenomenon. In medieval European monasteries, the cyclical chanting of the divine offices, Lauds, Prime, Terce, Sext, Nun, Vespers, and Compline, structured the entire day and night around prayers timed to specific hours. But how does one measure the hours accurately when cloud cover obscures the sun for days? This is where the nocturnal dial came into play. This clever instrument allowed a monk to tell time by the rotation of the constellations around the pole star, particularly the 2 pointer stars in the constellation Ursa Major. On a clear night, he would align the dial with the North Star and then cite the position of the gods of the Little Dipper, reading the hour from a scale. This act of stargazing to determine the time for Compline prayers transformed the night sky into a colossal, divine clock face. The ritual use of this instrument turned the monk's gaze heavenward, blending the practical need to maintain the sacred schedule with a moment of personal wonder and connection to the celestial mechanics governed by God. The power and authority of these instruments were magnified by the powerful myths that surrounded their origin. Just as the Greek titan Prometheus was said to have stolen fire from the gods to empower humanity, many cultures told stories of divine beings gifting the secrets of astronomy and its tools to mankind. In ancient Mesopotamia, the god of wisdom and fresh water, was credited with bestowing upon humanity the knowledge of the stars and the first instruments to measure them, elevating astronomy from a mere skill to a sacred science. These stories did more than just explain where the tools came from. They sanctified their use. To hold an astrolabe was to hold a piece of divine knowledge, a fragment of Promethean fire. This mythic backdrop meant that a priest or scholar using such a device wasn't just a technician. He was a participant in an ongoing divine revelation, an interpreter of the celestial language written by the gods. The act of calculation became a form of prayer, and the resulting alignment of a ceremony was proof of being in harmony with the universe's creator. This collaboration between cutting-edge technology and ancient myth fundamentally transformed the experience of worship. It made the vast, often intimidating scale of the cosmos something intimate and manageable. A sundial in a monastery garden, marking the hours for prayer, grounded the infinite passage of celestial time in the daily rhythm of human devotion. The astrolabe, with its complex plates and alidades, was a tangible puzzle box that, when solved, revealed God's intended time for community prayer. This integration ensured that astronomy was never a separate, secular pursuit, but was woven into the very fabric of spiritual life. The tools were the meeting point where the precision of mathematics shook hands with the mystery of faith, creating a powerful synthesis that allowed every worshipper, through the actions of their priests and timekeepers, to feel connected to the precise, beautiful, and orderly workings of the heavens. Imagine a form of storytelling so powerful it doesn't just tell you about the cosmos, but lets you physically become it. For ancient cultures, music and dance were not merely entertainment. They were sacred technologies for embodying celestial order, a way to rhythmically sync the human body with the harmonious motions of the universe itself. This profound connection turned artistic performance into a living, breathing ritual, where every gesture and every note was a conscious echo of the heavenly dance happening overhead. In India, this philosophy reached its zenith in the classical dance form of Bharatanatyam. Here, the dancer's entire body becomes a vessel for cosmic expression. The intricate hand gestures known as mudras are not arbitrary. They are a precise vocabulary, each one representing a different celestial body, a force of nature, or a deity. But the connection goes even deeper. The dance is structured around the concept of the nakshatras, the 27 lunar mansions that chart the moon's path against the backdrop of stars over its monthly cycle. A skilled performer might choreograph a sequence to embody the specific energy of a particular nakshatra, perhaps the fierce, transformative power of Jayastha or the nurturing, watery nature of Revati. This practice is rooted in the foundational Hindu myth of Nataraja, the lord of dance, who is depicted in a circle of fire performing the Tandava, the cosmic dance that simultaneously creates, sustains, and will eventually dissolve the entire universe. When a dancer takes the stage, they are not just performing a story, they are reenacting the very rhythm of creation, aligning their own movement with the divine choreography that spins the galaxies. This concept of mapping the heavens through sound was equally potent in the Americas, where Native American powwow ceremonies served as a vibrant intersection of community, healing, and cosmic cartography. The songs performed, often accompanied by the steady, heartbeat-like pulse of the drum, are far more than music. They are sonic maps, oral histories, and spiritual petitions all woven into one. Certain songs are specifically composed to honor the star nations, their rhythms and melodic patterns mirroring the perceived movement of constellations across the night sky. For instance, a particular song might be sung only when the constellation known as the Hand Star, or the Northern Crown, is at its zenith, its melody rising and falling in a pattern that traces the constellation's shape. The stories told around the powwow circle often speak to the origin of music itself, describing how the first rhythms were learned from the pulsing of the earth and the first melodies were gifted by the wind whistling through the stars. These songs are used for specific purposes. A healing song might invoke the gentle, restorative light of the moon, while a celebratory song for a successful hunt might echo the swift, powerful trajectory of a meteor streaking through the atmosphere. In this tradition, to sing is to navigate, to heal is to harmonize, and to celebrate is to join a chorus that includes the entire cosmos. What makes these musical and dance rituals so powerful is their ability to transform abstract astronomy into a full-bodied sensory experience. It's one thing to be told that the universe operates in cycles of harmony and balance. It's another thing entirely to feel that truth in your bones as you move in a circle with your community, your feet pounding the earth in time with a drum that echoes the celestial pulse. The rhythm of the drum becomes the heartbeat of the earth and the stars combined. The melody of a flute becomes the voice of the wind weaving between the planets. The dancer's spinning leap becomes a comet's fiery trail. This is knowledge felt rather than simply learned, a wisdom that bypasses the intellect to resonate directly with the spirit. It forges an emotional and physical connection to the cosmos that a star chart or a myth told by a fire could only point toward. Through these artistic expressions, the vast, impersonal scale of the universe becomes intimately personal, a partner in a dance that every member of the community is invited to join. This practice of embodying the cosmos did more than just educate or entertain. It was a fundamental act of community building and spiritual alignment. When an entire village gathered to perform a dance that reenacted the story of the Pleiades sisters, they weren't just watching a performance, they were collectively affirming their shared mythology, their shared understanding of the world, and their shared place within it. The coordinated movements fostered a profound sense of unity, each individual's body becoming a single note in a much larger, harmonious chord struck against the silence of the universe. This collective participation turned the night sky into a shared cultural treasure, a common story that everyone could see, hear, and feel together. The music and dance became the glue that bound the community to each other and to the heavens above, ensuring that the celestial narratives were not just stories to be heard, but rhythms to be lived, breathed, and danced into being with every beat of the drum and every step under the stars. Tonight, under a clear, dark sky far from the glow of modern cities, you can still feel the pull to look up together. For ancient peoples, this instinct was the foundation of a profound spiritual practice. Stargazing was rarely a solitary hobby. It was a community event, a sacred ritual where the entire village or tribe would gather to witness the grand spectacle above. These weren't passive viewings, they were active ceremonies, often timed with awe-inspiring celestial events like a brilliant meteor shower, a rare planetary conjunction where two gods seemed to meet, or the dramatic appearance of a comet. The group would assemble on a hillside, a temple rooftop, or around a central fire, their faces turned upward in shared anticipation. The air would be thick with a mixture of excitement and reverence, as these moments were understood not as random astronomical occurrences, but as powerful portals to the divine, fleeting opportunities to witness the gods at work and to receive their messages. The experience was always enriched by the ancient art of storytelling. As the community watched, the elders and priests would recite the myths associated with the event unfolding overhead. If it was a meteor shower, they might tell a story of the sky spirits hurling fiery arrows to chase away demons, or of ancestral souls briefly streaking across the heavens to check on their living descendants. A close meeting of Jupiter and Venus might be explained as the love affair between two deities, their brilliant light a sign of their passion, blessing or warning the people below. This narrative layer transformed the abstract light show into a relatable drama, giving the community a framework to understand what they were seeing and to process the emotions, awe, fear, wonder, that such events naturally evoke. The stories provided comfort, meaning, and a direct link to the cultural wisdom of their ancestors, all under the celestial stage itself. A beautiful and specific example of this comes from the Aboriginal peoples of Australia and their relationship with the emu in the sky. This constellation is not formed by stars, but by the dark patches of cosmic dust within the Milky Way, creating the silhouette of a giant emu. Its orientation changes throughout the year, and its seasonal appearance was a crucial ecological and cultural signal. When the emu appeared horizontal in the evening sky around April, it was seen as a male emu running, which coincided with the time to gather its eggs. Later in the year, when its shape shifted to appear more like an emu sitting on a nest, it signaled that the eggs were now hatching and should be left alone. The community would gather to observe this change, and the elders would tell the dreamtime stories of the emu, stories that wove together astronomy, law, and sustainable hunting practices. This shared observation under the stars was far more than a lesson. It was a ritual that reinforced kinship ties, reminded everyone of their responsibilities to the land and its creatures, and connected their daily survival directly to the cycles of the cosmos. Beyond the stories, these gatherings were often accompanied by prayers, chants, or periods of silent reflection. The communal aspect was key, sharing in the wonder of a meteor storm or the eerie glow of a lunar eclipse created a powerful, unspoken bond among the participants. It was a collective intake of breath, a shared moment of humility in the face of the universe's grandeur. This experience fostered a profound sense of unity and belonging, reminding each individual that they were part of something much larger than themselves, their family, their tribe, and the vast, mysterious cosmos itself. The ritual of star-gazing together turned astronomy from a personal observation into a shared spiritual journey, strengthening the social fabric of the community while simultaneously deepening every person's connection to the infinite. It was a practice that acknowledged a fundamental truth, that some wonders are best experienced not alone, but together under the endless story-filled vault of the night. Think about the words we use without even thinking. When we say a project is our North Star, guiding our decisions, or describe a hopeful new beginning as a starburst of opportunity, we are speaking the language of the ancients. This deep, almost invisible weaving of astronomy into our everyday speech is one of the most enduring legacies of the Mythmakers. They didn't just build temples to the stars, they built a linguistic universe where the cosmos lived on the tip of every tongue. To call a pair of lovers star-crossed is to instantly invoke a world of meaning, a tragic destiny written in the heavens long before they were born, a concept straight from the astrological beliefs that planets could dictate fate. To describe a friend's changeable nature as mercurial is to instantly summon the image of the swift, unpredictable messenger god Mercury and his planetary namesake, which darts quickly across the sky. Even our description of mood swings as lunacy, or a lunar state of mind, directly ties our emotions to the ancient, powerful influence of the moon, a belief that the satellite cycles could tug on the fluids of the human body and mind just as it pulled the tides. These aren't dead metaphors, they are fossilized poetry, the remnants of a time when everyone understood that human character and destiny were intimately linked to the dance of the heavens. This celestial vocabulary was kept vibrantly alive through intimate, personal rituals, the most profound of which was the naming of a child. In countless cultures, the moment of birth was not just a biological event but an astronomical one. A Roman father might consult a local astrologer to cast his newborn son's chart, and if the planet Mars was dominant, he might choose a name like Marcus, invoking the god of war and instilling the hope for a courageous, strong-willed man. A girl born under the sign of Venus, the planet of love and beauty, might be named Cynthia, an epithet for the moon goddess Diana, further connecting her to celestial grace. In India, the traditional practice of Jyotish astrology often directly influences a baby's name, with specific syllables chosen based on the position of the moon's lunar mansion, or nakshatra, at the time of birth. This ritual was far more than a simple label. It was an act of cosmic alignment, a prayer that the child's life would embody the best qualities of their celestial patron. It embedded a piece of the universe into their very identity, a constant, subtle reminder that they were a child of the cosmos, their life path intertwined with the stars from their first breath. Beyond individual names, the collective wisdom of the community was stored in proverbs and sayings that served as practical, celestial guidebooks for daily life. A medieval European farmer, hesitant to begin a long journey, might mutter, "Beware the bad stars," and postpone his trip not out of simple fear, but from a learned respect for the potential misalignments in the heavens that could portend misfortune. This was applied astronomy. A Portuguese fisherman's wife, watching her husband set sail, might say, "Wait for the right constellation," her patience rooted in generations of observed knowledge that certain star patterns promised calmer seas and fuller nets. In Japan, a proverb states, "The moon is a watchman, the stars are police," a vivid metaphor warning that even under the cover of darkness, your actions are witnessed by the all-seeing heavens, a powerful deterrent against wrongdoing that tied morality to celestial observation. These proverbs were the distilled essence of mythic astronomy, turning complex observations into bite-sized, actionable wisdom that could guide everything from commerce and travel to ethics and relationships, ensuring the lessons of the stars were never forgotten. This profound integration of the cosmos into the very structure of language created a world where words did more than communicate, they connected. To speak was to unconsciously participate in an ancient, ongoing dialogue with the universe. Every metaphor was a tiny story, every name a personal myth, every proverb a collective memory of the sky's influence. It made astronomy a subtle yet omnipresent force in daily life, a shared cultural code that everyone understood. The sky was no longer a distant, silent expanse. It was an active conversational partner, its stories and lessons embedded so deeply in common speech that they became invisible. The water in which our ancestors swam, their every word a testament to a time when humanity saw its own reflection twinkling back from the infinite night. Even the simple act of buying a loaf of bread or selling a basket of pottery was, for the ancients, a transaction witnessed by the heavens. This profound connection between commerce and the cosmos was made tangible in the very currency that passed from hand to hand. Ancient coins were far more than just standardized lumps of metal. They were miniature, portable altars, each one stamped with celestial symbols that invoked divine blessing on the wealth it represented. A Roman denarius, for instance, might feature a crescent moon or a star beside the emperor's profile, a subtle but powerful claim that his reign and the economic stability of the empire were sanctioned by the cosmic order. Similarly, Chinese coinage, with its distinctive round shape surrounding a square hole, was itself a cosmic symbol. The circle represented the heavens, the square represented the earth, and the coin was a physical manifestation of the harmonious interaction between the two realms. Prosperity literally flowed from this celestial earthly balance. These symbols were not arbitrary decorations. They were a form of spiritual branding, ensuring that every transaction conducted with the coin carried a tiny echo of a prayer for abundance and stability, directly linking the marketplace to the movements of the stars. This need for celestial approval became even more pronounced when the stakes were high, such as before a long and perilous trade journey. A merchant in ancient Phoenicia, about to send a ship laden with precious purple dye and cedar wood across the Mediterranean, would not simply check the weather. He would first consult an astrologer priest to determine the most auspicious day for departure, based on the favorable alignment of Jupiter, the planet of expansion and good fortune, and perhaps the phase of the moon. Then a ritual would be held on the docks. Offerings of incense, food, or even a small animal might be made to the specific star or constellation believed to guide sailors, such as the pole star or the constellation of the Great Bear. This was not merely superstition, it was a critical risk management strategy. By seeking the favor of the star gods, the merchant was effectively taking out a form of spiritual insurance, believing that divine protection was the most valuable commodity he could secure before his tangible goods ever left the harbor. This ritual transformed a speculative commercial venture into a cosmic endeavor, a partnership between human ambition and heavenly will. Guiding these rituals were the powerful myths of gods who specifically presided over the chaotic and unpredictable world of trade. In the Roman world, this was the domain of Mercury, one of the most widely worshipped deities across the empire. He wasn't just a messenger, he was the god of commerce, profit, and negotiation. His attributes were a masterclass in symbolic storytelling, the winged sandals that allowed him to move with the speed of thought between worlds, the caduceus staff that symbolized negotiation and the harmonious resolution of conflict, and the purse he often carried, representing financial gain. Crucially, Mercury was not a distant, judgmental god. He was a savvy, almost cunning patron who understood the give and take of the marketplace. Traders would make small offerings to his statues at crossroads or in the forum before a major deal, asking for his cleverness in negotiation and his protection from thieves. His name gives us the word mercurial, reflecting the fast-changing, unpredictable nature of both markets and the planet that raced across the sky in his honor. This planetary link was key. The success of a business deal was seen as influenced by the same celestial forces that governed the swift motion of Mercury through the heavens. This intricate system of symbols, rituals, and myths did something remarkable for the ancient world. It infused the often ruthless mechanics of economics with a sense of divine order and ethical responsibility. When your wealth carries the image of a star, you are subtly reminded that your fortune is not entirely of your own making, but is partly a gift from the cosmos entrusted to you. This concept fostered a form of cosmic accountability. A merchant might be less inclined to engage in fraudulent practices if he believed his actions were being observed not just by his fellow humans, but by Mercury himself or by the star gods whose symbols were stamped on his coins. The marketplace, rather than being a lawless free-for-all, was understood as a microcosm of the universe, operating under the same principles of balance, reciprocity, and order. A fair price was a celestial price. An honest deal was a deal that maintained harmony with the heavens. This perspective transformed daily business from a purely materialistic pursuit into a sacred activity, where the accumulation of wealth was balanced by a deeper responsibility to the cosmic forces that made that wealth possible. Even the brutal theater of war was not left to human whim alone, but was carefully stage-managed according to the celestial script. Ancient commanders understood that victory required more than just superior numbers or strategy. It demanded the favor of the cosmos, and this meant launching their campaigns under the most auspicious stars. The famed Battle of Marathon, where the outnumbered Athenians achieved a stunning victory over the Persians, did not begin on a random day. Historical accounts suggest it was fought under the full moon, a time associated with the goddess Artemis, who was worshipped as a protector of Athens. For the Greek soldiers, the silvery light flooding the battlefield was not just practical illumination for night maneuvers. It was a visible sign of divine presence, a celestial ally watching over them. This belief transformed their courage, turning a desperate military engagement into a mythic struggle where the outcome was believed to be preordained by the heavens. The timing was a deliberate act, aligning human conflict with a moment of perceived peak celestial power, ensuring that every sword thrust and shield wall was part of a larger cosmic drama. This practice of using astronomy to sanction violence reached its most dramatic expression with the Aztec Empire and their concept of the Flowery Wars. These were not wars of conquest for territory, but carefully orchestrated ritual battles fought by prearranged agreement with neighboring city-states like Tlaxcala. Their primary purpose was not to destroy the enemy, but to capture live prisoners for sacrifice. The timing of these conflicts was meticulously chosen by Aztec astronomer priests based on the complex movements of Venus, which they knew as Tlahuizcalpantecutli, the fearsome lord of the dawn. They believed the sun god Huitzilopochtli required a constant supply of human hearts and blood, the precious liquid of life, to fuel his daily battle against the forces of darkness and to ensure he had the strength to rise each morning. A war launched under a specific phase of Venus was thus a sacred mission to gather this essential cosmic fuel. The battlefield became a harvesting ground, and the captured warrior was not a defeated foe but an honored offering, his sacrifice a necessary transaction to maintain the very order of the universe and keep the sun on its appointed path. When the dust of battle settled, the heavens also provided the blueprint for peace. The myths of gods resolving their own divine conflicts offered powerful archetypes for human diplomacy. The image of Zeus hurling a thunderbolt to settle a dispute among the other Olympians was not just an exciting story, it was a lesson in authority and decisive judgment. A human mediator seeking to end a war between two rival kings might consciously invoke this celestial model, positioning himself as a Zeus-like figure whose judgment was as final and unquestionable as a bolt from the blue. Treaties and armistices were themselves often timed with astronomical events to lend them divine permanence. Swearing a solemn oath of peace under the unwavering light of the North Star, known for its constancy, was believed to make the agreement as enduring as the fixed point in the heavens itself. Conversely, signing a treaty during the chaotic period of a planet in retrograde might be avoided entirely, for fear the agreement itself would become unstable and reverse course. The celestial bodies were seen as impartial witnesses to these pacts, and their favorable alignment was considered as crucial to a lasting peace as the terms of the agreement itself. This intricate fusion fundamentally embedded astronomy into the very mechanics of power, providing both a justification for conflict and a path to its resolution. A king could point to a comet or an eclipse as a divine mandate to invade a neighboring land, framing aggression as obedience to the gods. Conversely, a priest could point to a benevolent planetary conjunction as a heavenly signal to lay down arms and seek reconciliation. The cosmos became the ultimate arbitrator, a higher authority to which all sides could appeal, lifting human disputes out of the muddy realm of mere politics and placing them on the grand, impersonal stage of the universe. This system removed the burden of sole responsibility from human leaders, A defeat could be explained as the will of the stars rather than a failure of command, while a victory was a shared triumph with the celestial forces. In this way, the heavens were not a distant backdrop to human history but an active, conscious participant, their silent motions giving license to war and their steady light guiding the way back to peace. From the grand scale of urban planning and the solemnity of funerary rites, we turn to the most intimate and portable form of celestial expression, the very clothes on one's back and the jewels adorning the body. For ancient peoples, clothing was far more than a practical necessity for warmth or modesty. It was a potent, wearable canvas for declaring one's place within the cosmic order. A simple piece of jewelry or the pattern on a tunic could serve as a personal talisman, a declaration of faith, and a map of the heavens, all woven into the fabric of daily life. An Egyptian noblewoman fastening a broad collar necklace of faience beads and golden solar discs wasn't just accessorizing. She was draping herself in the protective energy of the sun god Ra, his life-giving rays now shimmering around her neck. Similarly, a Norse craftsman painstakingly engraving an intricate star-shaped pattern onto a bronze brooch was doing more than decorating a cloak. He was capturing a piece of the night sky forged in the halls of Asgard, a small piece of divine armor to pin to his tunic. This practice transformed the act of getting dressed each morning into a personal ritual of alignment, a daily reaffirmation of one's connection to the divine forces governing the universe. This connection was especially powerful during formal ceremonies and rites of passage. The ritual of dressing for these events was often as important as the event itself, involving specific invocations and prayers to the celestial beings whose symbols were being worn. A Maya priest preparing for a ceremony to honor the maize god would don a heavily woven textile featuring a complex pattern of stepped frets and diamond shapes. To the untrained eye, it might look like simple geometry, but to the initiated, it was a representation of the Waka-chan, the world tree, which was also the path of the Milky Way across the sky. As he wrapped himself in this garment, he might chant a prayer to the celestial serpent that traveled along this starry path, invoking its wisdom and power for the rituals to come. He wasn't just putting on clothes, he was clothing himself in the cosmos itself, transforming his physical body into a vessel for celestial energy. This belief that wearing these symbols could attract divine protection and channel specific powers meant that every item of ceremonial wear was charged with intention, a sartorial prayer meant to be seen and felt by both the wearer and the gods. The stories behind these designs provided the essential narrative that gave the symbols their meaning and power. The Maya didn't just see a random scattering of stars in the Milky Way. Their mythology described it as a great cosmic road, often depicted as a giant, twisting serpent. They believed this was the path souls traveled after death, and that it was the source of all creative energy. Therefore, a woman weaving a blanket with a pattern that mirrored this celestial serpent wasn't just making a beautiful design. She was physically integrating the story of creation and the afterlife into her craft. The act of weaving itself became a retelling of the myth, each pass of the shuttle a repetition of the cosmic order. In ancient Egypt, the story of the sky goddess Nut, who arched her star-studded body over the earth, swallowing the sun each evening and giving birth to it each morning, was a foundational creation narrative. This myth was directly replicated in art and adornment. A pharaoh's burial mask might feature a vulture headdress whose wings were painted with a precise pattern of stars, symbolizing the protective embrace of the goddess herself. The story made the symbol potent, and the symbol made the story tangible, a cycle of meaning that was worn on the skin. This profound integration did something remarkable. It turned the concept of fashion into a deep ritual of identity and belonging. What you chose to wear, or what you were given to wear, announced your place in the world. a Celtic chieftain wearing a torque etched with lunar symbols was publicly aligning his leadership with the cyclical, renewing power of the moon. A Navajo child wrapped in a blanket woven with the constellation of First Big One was being swaddled in the story of their creation, their very identity intertwined with the stars from their earliest moments. In this way, clothing and adornment became a language without words, a silent but eloquent way of communicating one's beliefs, one's tribe, and one's understanding of the universe. It created a visible community where you could look across a crowded festival and see others who shared your cosmic worldview by the patterns on their clothes and the symbols around their necks. Ultimately, this practice made the vastness of the cosmos something intimate, personal, and beautiful. You didn't need to be an astronomer priest to have a relationship with the heavens. You could express it through the jewelry you crafted, the patterns you wove, and the ceremonial robes you wore. Every time an ancient person fastened a star-shaped brooch or drew on a robe patterned after the night sky, they were performing a small, personal ritual of connection. They were carrying a piece of the universe with them, a constant, comforting reminder that the grand narratives of creation, the paths of the gods, and the cycles of the stars were not distant concepts, but stories woven into the very fabric of their lives, quite literally from head to toe. Just as the stars above mark their own transitions through the heavens, ancient cultures saw the journey of a human life as a series of celestial waypoints, each requiring its own sacred acknowledgement. The most pivotal of these, the moment a child steps into adulthood, was never left to chance or a simple birthday. It was an event choreographed by the cosmos itself. The Jewish tradition of the Bar Mitzvah offers a beautiful and enduring example. This ceremony, which marks a boy's assumption of religious responsibility at the age of 13, is not scheduled by the Gregorian calendar. Its timing is deeply tied to the Hebrew calendar, which is a complex lunisolar system. The exact date is determined by a combination of the solar year and the lunar months, meaning the celebration shifts within the solar year, its timing a direct reflection of the moon cycle. This practice is rooted in a profound mythic understanding that human maturation is not merely a biological process, but a spiritual one that must align with the rhythmic, nurturing energy of the moon, a celestial body long associated with cycles, intuition, and the passage of time. To come of age under the correct phase of the moon was to have one's new social and spiritual status blessed and recognized by the universe itself. This celestial scheduling extended far beyond a single culture. In many Native American tribes, a young girl's first menstruation, her entrance into womanhood, was a powerful event marked by a seclusion ritual often timed with the new moon. This phase of the lunar cycle, representing new beginnings and potential, was seen as the perfect celestial mirror for her own new beginning. During her isolation, she would be taught by the elder women of the tribe, her lessons often including the star lore that would guide her life. The Kogi people of Colombia still practice this, believing that a girl's first menses aligns her with the creative, life-giving force of the universe, a force also governed by the moon. Her seclusion and subsequent reintroduction to the community under a specific lunar phase ritually harmonized her personal fertility with the cosmic fertility of the earth and the heavens, embedding her identity within a larger, sacred system. As individuals moved into the later chapters of life, their value to the community was similarly framed within this cosmic context. Elders were not merely old, they were living libraries of celestial wisdom. The phrase, "wise as the stars," was not a casual compliment but a literal truth. In many traditions, it was believed that the knowledge and experiences of a long life did not vanish but instead accumulated like starlight, and that upon death, this wisdom would take its place in the night sky. The constellation of the crater, or the cup in Greek mythology, was sometimes associated with the wisdom and foresight of the elder seer Tyagers. To honor an elder was to acknowledge that they carried within them a piece of that eternal stellar knowledge. Rituals for respected elders often involved storytelling under the night sky, where they would point out constellations and recount the myths, passing this celestial wisdom down to the next generation. Their birthdays might be celebrated with special reference to the planetary configuration at their birth, seeing how the lessons of their life reflected the long, slow journey of Saturn, the planet of time and wisdom through its cycles. This practice of aligning life's milestones with the heavens did something profound. It wove the personal, biological timeline of a single human into the grand, eternal tapestry of the cosmos. A birthday was no longer just a personal anniversary. It was an annual recalibration, a moment when the unique celestial pattern present at one's birth, their personal slice of the universe, was reactivated and honored. A coming-of-age ceremony was a deliberate insertion of a young person into the rhythmic order of existence, giving them a defined and blessed place within it. And the honoring of elders was a way of celebrating a life that had successfully navigated these celestial currents, their very presence a testament to living in harmony with the universe's laws. Through these rituals, astronomy ceased to be a distant science and became the most intimate of guides, a celestial companion for the soul's journey from birth, through the trials of adulthood, and finally, to a legacy of wisdom that would, like the stars, shine on long after the individual had returned to the cosmos. This profound connection between the heavens and the earth transformed environmental management from a set of arbitrary rules into a sacred covenant, a promise made to the cosmos itself. Ancient societies didn't see themselves as separate from nature, but as an integral part of a single, living system whose rhythms were dictated by the sun, moon, and stars. To live sustainably was to live in harmony with this grand celestial clock, and their most effective conservation practices were those woven into the fabric of myth and timed by astronomical events. The Hawaiian kapu system stands as a powerful example of this celestial ecology. These weren't mere laws, they were divine prohibitions. The kapu restricting fishing for certain species like the ulua during specific lunar phases wasn't based on a modern understanding of spawning cycles, but on the deep mythological belief that the moon goddess, Hina, held dominion over the ocean's bounty. To fish during her designated rest periods was not just bad practice, it was a direct insult to the deity, an act of cosmic arrogance that would provoke her wrath and lead to emptier nets in the future. This mythic framework gave the conservation rule a power that no simple government edict could ever possess. It was enforced not by fear of a human penalty, but by a collective reverence for the natural order and a desire to maintain pono, or balance, with all of creation. This practice of aligning agricultural and ecological rituals with celestial turning points was a global phenomenon. Across ancient Europe, the spring and autumn equinoxes, those 2 days of perfect balance between light and dark, were not just markers of time but potent moments for action. Inspired by myths of earth goddesses like the Greek Demeter or the Celtic Brigid, whose sorrow and joy directly influenced the fertility of the land, communities would engage in ceremonial tree planting. To plant a young sapling during the equinox was to perform an act of sympathetic magic. It was a prayer made tangible, a physical effort to align the tree's life with the universe's moment of perfect equilibrium, in the hope that the plant would absorb this balance and grow strong, straight, and resilient. The ritual wasn't about maximizing efficiency or yield. It was about participating in a cycle of reciprocal care. The earth goddess gave her fruits, and in return, during this sacred window of time, her people gave back by planting for the future, ensuring the cycle could continue. This wasn't farming, it was a conversation with the cosmos conducted with saplings and soil. These narratives did more than just guide actions. They fundamentally shaped a world view where every mountain, river, and forest was seen as a physical manifestation of a celestial truth. A river's course might be explained by the story of a sky serpent carving its path across the land, making its waters sacred and its pollution a desecration of that myth. The felling of a great, ancient tree was not undertaken lightly, as it might be considered the earthly home of a star spirit or the resting place of an ancestor who had ascended to the heavens. This perspective fostered a deep, inherent respect for the environment. To harm nature was to disrupt a divine order, to vandalize a story written by the gods themselves. This ethos created a powerful form of intrinsic conservation, where the motivation to protect came not from external laws, but from an internalized reverence for an interconnected universe. The forest was not a resource to be managed, but a relative to be honored. This intricate integration of astronomy, myth, and ecology offered a comprehensive guide for a sustainable lifestyle, where daily actions were perpetually informed by the wisdom of the stars. A farmer knew not to harvest medicinal herbs under the harsh light of the full moon, but to wait for the gentle, pulling energy of the new moon, believing it concentrated the plant's healing power in their roots. A woodcutter knew which phase of the moon was best for felling timber so it would season without warping or rot, knowledge passed down through stories of the moon's influence on all earthly fluids and fibers. This was a science of timing, encoded not in textbooks but in oral tradition and celestial observation. It was a way of life that acknowledged humanity's role as a steward within a vast, intelligent system, not as a master over a passive resource. By looking up to the stars to understand how to live on the earth, our ancestors found a path toward true sustainability, one guided by wonder, story, and a humble recognition that our well-being is forever tied to the greater harmony of the cosmos. In the quiet vulnerability of sleep, the ancient world believed the cosmos spoke its clearest. Dreams were not seen as random neural firings, but as a sacred space where the boundary between the human soul and the universe grew thin, a nightly portal for celestial messages. This wasn't a passive experience, it was a ritual to be cultivated. Across cultures, individuals seeking guidance would intentionally position themselves to receive these visions, often sleeping in open-air temples, on high hilltops, or simply spreading their bedding under the specific sector of the sky ruled by a deity they wished to petition. The practice was a form of active, participatory astronomy, where the sleeper aligned their consciousness with a particular celestial frequency, hoping to tap into its wisdom before drifting into the dream state. This turned the night from a time of rest into an active dialogue, a deliberate opening of the self to the infinite. The Greeks provided a rich mythology to explain this process, centering on the god Morpheus. He was not merely a personification of sleep, but a divine messenger, the shaper of dreams. Crucially, he was one of the Wanneroi, the 1,000 sons of Nyx, the primordial night goddess, and his brothers included other personified forces like death and fate. This divine lineage positioned Morpheus as a being who moved freely between the realm of the stars and the human mind. The myths described how he would emerge from the underworld, his wings carrying him silently through the starry vault, and that he drew the very substance of his dreams from the constellations themselves. To dream of a mighty bear might be a message from the Great Bear constellation, a warning of a coming threat requiring great strength. A dream of a charging bull could be a vision channeled from the Taurus region of the Zodiac, perhaps an omen related to earthly stubbornness or agricultural fortune. The constellation was the vocabulary, and Morpheus was the eloquent speaker using it. A person seeking clarity on a journey might sleep under the part of the sky where the constellation of the charioteer was visible, whispering a prayer to Morpheus to send a dream that would reveal the right path forward, trusting the god to translate the silent language of the stars into a narrative they could understand. Beyond the passive reception of dreams, there was a more active, waking form of seeking answers, the practice of celestial divination, or reading the stars for omens. This was a sophisticated art far removed from simple fortune-telling. It was based on the core belief that the universe was a coherent, interconnected text, and that any unusual event within it, a shooting star, a sudden cloud obscuring a single constellation, or the way the planets were arranged on a given night, was a sentence in that text meant for a specific person or community. This practice was steeped in stories of legendary prophets who had first decoded this celestial language. In Mesopotamian tradition, the figure of Enmeduranki, a mythical pre-flood king, was said to have been taken up to the heavens by the gods Shamash and Adad and taught the secrets of oil divination, liver divination, and how to read the signs in the sky. His knowledge was passed down through generations of Baru priests, the master diviners. They would carefully observe the night, not just the planets and major constellations, but the subtleties, the brightness of stars, the color of their light, their relative positions to one another. A halo around the moon might be read as a divine shield protecting the king, while Mars appearing unusually red and close to the Scorpion constellation could be interpreted as a dire warning of conflict and venomous betrayal brewing in the court. These were not random guesses. They were interpretations based on a complex, inherited system of symbolism where every celestial body and its context held a specific meaning. This fusion of mythic narrative and precise observation transformed the night sky into the most personal of oracles, and farmer unsure whether to risk planting his fragile seedlings could look up. If he saw the Pleiades cluster shining with a particularly clear and steady light, a sign historically associated with his culture's stories of the seven nurturing sisters, he might take it as a celestial thumbs up, a promise of gentle weather to come. A merchant debating between two trade routes might watch the path of the moon. If it passed closely by the bright star Sirius, known in some traditions as the faithful hound or a harbinger of heat, he might choose the northern, cooler route, interpreting the conjunction as a warning of scorching conditions to the south. These practices offered a powerful sense of agency in an uncertain world. They provided a framework for decision-making that extended beyond human fallibility, tapping into what was believed to be a higher, divine intelligence. It was a way to quiet the noise of anxiety and indecision by seeking counsel from the silent, steadfast, and eternal cosmos. The answer might require interpretation, but the very act of looking up and engaging in the ritual was an affirmation of faith, a belief that the universe was not indifferent, but was actively communicating, offering intimate insights to those who learned to read its starry script. From the precise alignment of a temple doorway to capture the solstice sun, to the farmer's almanac written in the phases of the moon, we've journeyed through a world where the sky was never silent. It was a constant, living presence, its rhythms choreographing the dance of daily life. The ancient mythmakers didn't just see patterns in the stars, they saw a storybook, a divine blueprint, and a sacred map all in one. They wove the vast, impersonal movements of the cosmos into the intimate fabric of human existence, transforming cold astronomy into warm, actionable wisdom. These rituals were the threads that connected the harvest to the heavens, a king's coronation to a planet's journey, and a child's name to a constellation's rise. They offered more than just practical guidance, they provided something even more vital, meaning. In a world of uncertainty, they created order. In the face of chaos, they offered a narrative of resilience. And in the profound solitude of a vast universe, they forged a deep, unshakable sense of connection. This incredible legacy is not a relic confined to history books. It's a living inheritance, one that still whispers to us today. When we feel a sense of awe looking up at a meteor shower, or find comfort in the predictable cycle of the seasons, we are touching that same human impulse to find our place in the cosmos. The ancient lessons of harmony, of living in sync with natural cycles rather than struggling against them, resonate deeply in our modern search for sustainability and balance. Their stories of resilience, of communities coming together under the stars to face an eclipse or ensure the sun's return, remind us of our own capacity to overcome challenges through shared purpose and collective action. And that profound sense of connection, the understanding that our personal stories are part of a much grander cosmic narrative, is perhaps the most precious gift they left us. It's a reminder that we are not separate observers of the universe, but active participants within it. So the next time you find yourself beneath a starry sky, take a moment to really look up. See it not as our ancestors did, perhaps, but with the knowledge of what it once represented. See the plow, the hunter, the dragon, and the scales. See the stories. And then consider how you might bring a fragment of that celestial wisdom down to earth. Your ritual doesn't have to be grand. It could be as simple as sharing a meal with loved ones to mark the changing season, taking a quiet walk under the full moon to reflect, or even just pausing to name the constellations you can recognize. It's about intentionally creating moments that connect you to the larger rhythms of the world around you. We'd love to hear how these ancient ideas spark your own imagination. What small rituals give your life a sense of meaning and connection? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation under the same stars that have guided humanity for millennia. And if you want to keep exploring the incredible stories that shape our world, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next journey into the myths of the past.